Your country house and car are sold. We're leaving tomorrow." That was the text I received on a cold Thursday morning. No explanation, no warmth, just that. From my only daughter, Amelia. I stared at my phone for what felt like hours. My fingers trembled. My eyes blurred. My heart, already weakened by age and sorrow, tightened with a pain I couldn't name. I am Robert Lane, 72 years old, a retired carpenter. I built that house with my own hands, brick by brick, beam by beam. I planted the oak tree in the front yard when Amelia was born. That house wasn't just shelter. It was our history. It was my legacy. And now it was gone? I remember when Amelia was a child. She used to run barefoot across the wooden floors, her laughter bouncing off the walls like wind chimes. I used to carry her on my shoulders, tell her bedtime stories, and promise her the stars. But life has a way of shifting. After her mother died, Amelia changed. She grew distant, moved to the city, married a man named Mark, successful, cold, and sharp-tongued. I was happy she found someone, but deep down, I always feared he didn't love her the way she deserved. Or maybe he never approved of me. An old man with calloused hands and a weathered heart. I lived alone in the countryside after that. Occasionally, Amelia would visit with her 2 children, always in a hurry, always checking the time, but I didn't mind. Their laughter still filled the empty rooms, even if only for a weekend. And now this. They came that afternoon. Amelia, Mark, and the kids. A sleek black car, city clothes, rushed voices. Mark didn't even greet me. He started directing the movers. Boxes were already packed, labeled, sorted. I didn't even know when they had done it. "Dad," Amelia said, avoiding my eyes, "we've sold the house. The papers are signed. The car, too. We've booked a flight to California. It's better for the kids. You can stay in the city with us until we find a place for you. Maybe an assisted facility." "Facility?" I echoed. Amelia flinched. Mark stepped in. "It's for the best. You'll have nurses, meals on time, a clean environment. This place is falling apart." I looked around. The chipped paint. The creaking stairs. The oak tree, now tall and proud, shading the porch where I once rocked Amelia to sleep. Falling apart? Or full of memories? I wanted to scream, to beg, to remind them that this wasn't just a house. It was my soul laid in wood and stone. But I didn't. I simply nodded. "All right," I said quietly. That night I sat alone in my empty living room, just me and the silence. My family was asleep upstairs, or pretending to be. I opened an old drawer, took out a faded photo. Amelia as a child, hugging my neck, smiling as if the world was perfect. I clutched it to my chest. I didn't sleep, because tomorrow everything would change. But not in the way they thought. The night was still, too still, the kind that presses heavy on the chest and whispers old regrets. I didn't sleep. I sat in that empty living room, watching the moonlight spill through the lace curtains onto the faded rug. Every corner of the house held echoes of laughter that no longer belonged to me. I could still hear her little feet running down the hallway. "Daddy, I found a frog!" She had always been so alive, so full of spark. Where did that child go? Now she was a woman in heels and sharp words, texting me like a burden she couldn't wait to offload. And tomorrow she'd leave me behind like an old newspaper. Sold the house, sold the car, without even a conversation. I had built this house with my own 2 hands. Each nail, each wooden beam, was a part of me. I built it for her, for the family I loved. But love, what is it if it isn't remembered? At dawn, I made tea. The old kettle still hissed the way it used to when she came home from school. I poured 2 cups, even though I knew she wouldn't sit across from me again. Around 9 a.m., the movers returned. They barely looked at me, just nodded like I was the ghost of the house, not its heart. Boxes thudded against the floorboards. Furniture I'd kept since her mother passed was hauled out like trash. I sat on the front steps. My daughter finally appeared, dressed in city polish, not a trace of guilt in her eyes. Her husband followed, fidgeting with car keys. They didn't say much. Maybe they didn't know what to say. Maybe they didn't care. But then something strange happened. My granddaughter, Emma, barely 10, walked over and sat beside me. She looked up at the sky, then at me. "Grandpa, are you sad?" I didn't know how to answer, so I said nothing. She slipped her tiny hand into mine and whispered, "Mom says this place is old and useless, but I like it here. It feels real." And just like that, the tears I had held back broke free. Not for the house, not even for the car, but for the tiny hand that still saw me as something worth sitting beside. That moment broke something open in me. They had taken my home, my dignity, my silence, but they hadn't taken my worth. That still lived in Emma's eyes. As the car engine started and they waited for me to say goodbye, I stood, but not to wave. I walked back inside, to the attic, to the envelope I had hidden for years. It wasn't money. It was something far more powerful. The sun hadn't even risen when I heard the shuffle of feet in the hallway. My granddaughter's little voice echoed as she played with her toys. I sat up in the creaky bed. One I'd bought decades ago for peaceful country. Mornings like these, and for a moment, I thought it was all a dream. But then the silence returned. I stepped into the kitchen and there she was, Amelia. My daughter, not as the child I once cradled in my arms, but as a woman with cold eyes and a tight jaw. She didn't look at me. She poured herself coffee and stared at her phone like I wasn't even there. "Morning," I said gently. She didn't respond, just walked past me. I followed her out to the porch, the same porch where I'd once built her dollhouse, board by board, in the summer heat. "I want to understand," I said. "You didn't even ask me. You sold everything. Why, Amelia?" She finally turned, eyes sharp. "Because you never asked me, not once. You chose your lonely silence after Mom died. You buried yourself in this place and never came back to us." Her words cut deeper than any knife. "You needed space," she continued. "But so did I. And now we need a life that isn't anchored to your sorrow." "I never stopped loving you," I whispered. She laughed bitterly. "Love isn't enough, Dad. We needed presence. You missed birthdays, graduations. I did it all alone. You chose grief. You abandoned us before we ever left you." My knees weakened. I sat slowly on the wooden step. The truth stung. I had run from the noise, the grief, the world that kept moving when she didn't. Then little Ella came outside, dragging her blanket. She climbed onto my lap without a word. I held her close. "Can I stay here with Grandpa?" she asked Amelia innocently. "I like it here. I like him." Amelia's face flickered, pain, maybe even regret, but she masked it quickly. "No, sweetheart. We talked about this." "Why are we leaving?" Ella asked. Amelia didn't answer, just turned away. I stood, still holding Ella. "She deserves to know," I said quietly. "You're pulling her from something she loves, just like you think I pulled away from you." Amelia paused, her fists clenched. "We're done talking, Dad. It's too late." But I wasn't done. I gently set Ella down, went back inside, and returned moments later, holding a worn-out envelope. The one from the attic. My lawyer's letter. I handed it to Amelia. "What's this?" She frowned. "My final decision," I said. "You sold the house, yes, but only the bricks. The land, the savings, and what's left of this legacy. That still belongs to me, and it's going to someone who remembers love." She opened the letter. Her eyes widened. "I left everything to Ella," I said. "She'll get it when she turns 21. If she wants to build something here, she can. If she wants to forget me, that's her right too." Amelia stared at me, broken, stunned. "I may have been absent. I may have failed you. But I won't fail her." And then I walked back inside. For the first time in years, I felt something other than sorrow. I felt peace. I sat there, watching the clock tick down to the last hour before they planned to leave. My daughter, still thinking she had the upper hand, avoided eye contact. Her husband looked irritated, and little Amy clutched her stuffed rabbit, confused by the tension in the air. They had already packed what they thought was their belongings. The house was half empty. My tool shed had been ransacked, my old photographs stacked carelessly on the porch. The car was washed, keys resting smugly on the table as if it no longer belonged to me. I had let them play their game long enough. As dinner time approached, I lit the fireplace, set the table with the finest china. Yes, the same ones passed down from my mother, and prepared a humble meal. Roast chicken, baked potatoes, and apple pie. Not a feast of riches, but a taste of memories, of family. "Let's have one last dinner together before you go," I said calmly. They hesitated. My daughter rolled her eyes but agreed. Amy smiled. She always loved my apple pie. We sat, the fire casting soft golden light across the room. The silence was sharp. I raised my glass. "To family," I said quietly. They mumbled the words back, except Amy, who chirped, "To Grandpa." I smiled at her and reached into my coat pocket. "I have something for you all," I said, laying 3 letters on the table. Thick envelopes, sealed. "What's this?" my daughter asked, suspicious. "Read it after dinner," I said. "It will be the last thing you need from me." After dessert, they opened the letters. Her husband turned pale first. She followed. Her eyes widened, jaw dropped. You changed the deed," she whispered. "Yes," I said. 2 weeks ago. The house, the car, everything. It's no longer in your name. It's under a trust. Controlled by a lawyer. Managed by a charity organization for abandoned elderly parents. It can't be sold. Not now, not ever." She jumped from her seat. "You can't do this." I looked at her with calm finality. "I did do it. This place was built with love, with sweat, with dreams. You tried to cash it in like a lottery ticket. But not everything in life has a price tag." Her husband started yelling, but I ignored him. Amy looked scared. I bent down to her level and whispered, "This home is still yours, sweetheart. One day, when you're older, if you remember me with kindness, it'll welcome you back." My daughter stood frozen. She looked around as if seeing the home for the first time, not as something she owned, but as something she'd lost. "Where will we go now?" she asked, her voice trembling. "That's for you to figure out," I said. "Just like I had to figure it out when I raised you alone." They packed in silence that night. No hugs, no apologies. Just the sound of a car door slamming and tires kicking up dust. Amy waved quietly from the back seat, tears in her eyes. And as the car disappeared into the dusk, I stood there in the doorway, the cold wind biting at my face, but inside, for the first time in years, I felt warm.